Before we crack open tonight's cursed can of content, I just want to say a big thank you to all our subscribers, and an extra Sinister shout out to the loyal members of the Sinister Elite. You legends help keep the darkness alive. If you're enjoying the stories and want to take it a step further, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and consider joining the Sinister Elite by clicking that join button below. Members get access to creepy custom emojis and exclusive Sinister Elite badges that level up the longer you survive with us. It's like loyalty, but spookier. All right, lights off, headphones in, and let's summon something we'll all regret. I hunt monsters in the Rocky Mountains for a living. Not bears, not cougars. Monsters. Real, claw to the face, scream in your sleep, eat your dog type monsters. People think the mountains are beautiful. I see them as a buffet for nightmares. I live in a creaky log cabin 6 miles off any map, surrounded by pine trees that lean in like they're eavesdropping. My gear? A modified shotgun, a silver hatchet, a cooler full of jerky, and a mop. Yes, a mop. Name's Moptimus Prime. Don't laugh. That thing has saved my ass more times than my shotgun has. It soaked up blood from a frost ghoul, slayed a slime elemental, and once spun so fast it shaved the fur off a shadow elk. Right next to my front door is a yellowed sheet of paper titled, "Rules to Survive the Mountain." Never hunt past midnight. Burn sage if it talks like a human. Moptimus drinks first. Clean every drop of blood. If Moptimus stands on its own, let it finish the fight. They're not just guidelines. They're gospel. Every hunter that ignored them is 6 feet under or worse, still wandering the woods screaming in a language that isn't human anymore. Tonight's hunt was already breaking Rule 1. The call came in late. A hiker near Devil's Knuckle reported weird screaming in trees that bled sap. I knew what that meant. Sap fiends. Tree-sucking goblin freaks with wooden antlers and mouths full of termites, and they only come out in the dead of night. I checked my watch. 11:42 p.m. Damn it. I sighed, grabbed my gear, and shouted, "Mop, let's roll." Moptimus fell off the wall with a thud, as if answering. Its fibers twitched like eager fingers. I strapped it to my back, loaded silver shells into the shotgun, and fired up my rusty old F-150. I call her the Beast, because she roars like one and guzzles gas like a demon with a drinking problem. By the time I got to the trailhead, it was 12:04 a.m. Rule officially broken. The forest was blacker than a tax collector's soul. My headlamp cast long shadows, and every crunch of pine needles felt like a warning. But I kept walking, shotgun ready, mop twitching behind me. That's when I saw it. A tree oozing thick amber sap, like it was sweating. The bark peeled like sunburned skin, and claw marks ran all down the trunk. And the smell? Rotting wood and something wet. Suddenly, a whisper slithered through the trees. "Help me!" My blood froze. The voice was high-pitched, female, a perfect mimic. I dropped the sage bundle in my left pocket, lit it, and waved it around like a holy lightsaber. The voice hissed, then turned into gurgling coughs. "Nice try," I muttered, stepping forward. The creature dropped from a branch overhead, all tangled limbs and bark skin. It screeched, rushing me with a mouthful of chewing mandibles. I blasted it point blank. Silver buckshot ripped through its chest and splattered black sap across the trees. And that's when Rule 4 kicked in. I dropped the shotgun and unhooked Moptimus. "All right, buddy. Time to earn your keep." The mop shimmered under the moonlight like it was excited. I dunked it into my canteen, mixed with a little holy water and lemon-scented ammonia, don't ask, then started scrubbing the forest floor. The black sap hissed as it vanished. The trees around me stopped creaking. The forest even felt lighter, like the evil had been vacuumed out of the air. "You good?" I asked the mop. It twitched once in my hand, then went limp. Back to neutral. That's how it worked. After the danger passed, it always went back to being a normal mop, until it didn't. I finished the cleanup and turned to head back. But Moptimus yanked itself from my grip and slammed flat against a nearby rock. What the? It stood up on its own, fibers flaring. Rule 5. My stomach dropped. Branches cracked behind me. I turned slowly, and there it was, 10 feet tall, a mountain fiend, bone-white skin, curved ram horns, and eyes like dying stars. It shouldn't be out this early in the season. They usually hibernate until winter, but this one looked hungry. I raised my shotgun. Moptimus hurled itself between us and whipped the monster across the jaw. The thing stumbled, stunned. The mop spun mid-air like a baton, then smacked the creature again, this time knocking off one of its horns. The fiend bellowed in pain and swiped, but Moptimus dodged, zipped up a tree and launched down like a javelin, stabbing the monster straight in the eye. It shrieked and fell backward, impaling itself on a sharp stump. Dead. I stood there blinking, jaw slack. I'm gonna need more mop buckets. The mountain fiend lay in a bloody heap, Moptimus Prime lodged in its eye socket like a judge's gavel slamming down the verdict. I approached slowly, shotgun raised, just in case it was faking. I've seen things play dead before. Once watched a snow wraith lay motionless for 3 hours, just to bite a ranger's ankle clean off. But this one wasn't playing possum. Its body twitched once, then turned to ash, like it had been erased from reality. I knelt and yanked Moptimus free. The fibers were singed but still radiating with faint blue heat. You all right, buddy? The mop gave a weak little shiver. A good sign. I holstered the shotgun, turned to head back to the truck, and that's when I heard it again. Help me. Same voice, same whisper, but this time it was behind me. I spun around and saw a woman limping out of the trees, covered in blood, one shoe missing. I've been lost for hours. Please. I didn't move. Her eyes glowed faintly orange. Fiend. A better one. This one was trying to think. I reached for the sage bundle, but the wind picked up and blew it clean out of my hand. It landed in the creek and fizzled out. The woman blinked. Slowly. Too slowly. Then she smiled, and all her teeth were wrong, flat, like a row of porcelain doll mouths shoved into her gums. Let me in, she whispered, voice layered with other voices underneath. I didn't answer. Instead, I held up the mop like a crucifix. She screamed. The air vibrated with it. Her skin cracked like old wallpaper and something moved underneath it. I lunged with Moptimus. The fibers extended. I swear they grew longer mid-swing and slapped her straight across the chest. She exploded into 1,000 moths. I stood alone again, panting, sage gone, adrenaline high. My heart thudded like a war drum. Back at the cabin, I updated the whiteboard I keep above my fireplace. Mop kill count, 17. Then I added a new tally, now 18. I cracked open a can of lukewarm chili and flopped onto my old couch. Moptimus leaned against the wall like it always did, perfectly still. Somehow smug, despite having no face. Don't get cocky, I muttered through a mouthful of beans. You're still just a glorified Swiffer. The cabin creaked. No wind, just the logs settling, or breathing. I hate when they do that. I was halfway through my third spoonful when the door knocked. Not burst open, not scratched, knocked. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Nobody knocks out here. I raised my shotgun, inched toward the door, and peered through the peephole. Nothing. Just fog. Another knock. This time on the window beside the door. I spun. Nothing there either. The fog rolled in fast. Too fast. I took 2 steps back and grabbed Moptimus again. Suddenly the lights flickered, then died. Total darkness. And then, laughter. Childlike, high-pitched, echoing from all corners of the room. Come on out, Hunter. My breath caught. This wasn't a mimic. This was something worse. I felt around on the bookshelf for my emergency flashlight and clicked it on. The beam landed on the wall, and I saw it. A face. Smiling. Pressed into the wood. It blinked at me. I screamed and swung the mop. The wall cracked open like paper, and something slithered out, part shadow, part smoke, all teeth. I backed up fast, bumping into my fireplace. My rules list flapped against the stone like it was trying to warn me. Rule 2. Burn sage if it talks like a human. Too late for that. The thing screeched, and I hurled Moptimus like a spear. The mop twisted midair and wrapped itself around the creature's neck like a noose. It yanked backward, dragging the beast across the cabin, then slammed it into the fridge, the table, the floor, the ceiling, until the walls were painted in black goo and shattered teeth. The lights flickered back on. The shadow thing was gone. But Moptimus, it just hovered there in midair for a moment, then flopped back down on the floor, limp. "Okay," I whispered. "You're officially promoted from janitor to frontline combat." The mop twitched once, almost like a bow. I cleaned up the mess, burned the remains, and reinforced the windows with iron shavings. Whatever that was, it wasn't local. Something new's crawling into the Rockies, and it wants me dead. The forest used to have rules, but now the monsters are getting smarter, trickier, and I'm starting to think they're not working alone. I finished scrubbing the last of the black tar off the cabin floor. Moptimus gave a little thwop of approval. Outside, the trees shook violently. Something huge moved through them. I sighed and reloaded the shotgun. Guess we're not getting sleep tonight. I woke up to the sound of antlers scratching the roof. Not birds, not wind. Antlers. That's a very specific sound, trust me. It's like metal forks scraping bone. You hear it once, and your stomach never forgets it. I rolled out of bed, shotgun in one hand, Moptimus Prime in the other. I sleep with them both next to me like some people sleep with teddy bears. The clock said 5:13 a.m. The sky outside was still dark, but the kind of dark that had intent, like the world was holding its breath before sunrise. Something massive shifted above. The ceiling groaned. I quietly stepped over to the fireplace, lit a sprig of dried cedar and muttered, "Not today, Satan." The scratching stopped. I waited. Then it started again, but this time on the side of the cabin. Whatever it was had climbed down and was circling the place like a predator checking the fence. I moved to the back door, peeked through the slats, and there it was. A shadow buck, 8 feet tall, skin stretched thin over black bone, and a rack of antlers so twisted they looked like roots. Its hooves weren't touching the ground. It floated just an inch above the dirt. Worst part? It was wearing a face. Human. Could have been mine if I'd been unlucky. Eyes sewn open, mouth stitched into a permanent scream. And behind it? Blood. A trail of it stretching all the way to the tree line, smearing across the frost-covered ground. I flipped open my rule sheet. Rule 4. Clean every drop of blood. Monsters track by scent. This wasn't just a warning. It was a trap. The blood was bait. I had 2 options. Stay inside, board up, and hope it wandered off. Clean up the blood trail before something worse followed it to my front door. I looked at Moptimus. It twitched once, almost like a nod. "Yeah," I sighed. "Option 2 it is." I threw on my coat, loaded the mop bucket with ammonia holy water mix, and stepped outside. The creature didn't move, just hovered there, watching me, silent. I knelt and started scrubbing, cold as hell, blood frozen into the earth. The mop's fibers hissed and sparked as it erased every stain like a divine eraser. As I worked my way down the trail, I kept glancing up at the buck. It was following me, not walking, not attacking, just floating about 20 feet back. Watching, like it was waiting for something. I cleaned faster. The trail wound through the trees, past old bear dens, down a rocky slope, and then stopped. A clearing, a stone circle, and a man, or what looked like one. He was hunched, with skin stretched too tight across his skull and eyes that blinked sideways. He wore a park ranger's uniform, but it looked wrong, like it was grown onto him. He turned slowly. "You're early," he rasped. I didn't respond. The buck hovered behind me, antlers humming in the air like tuning forks. The man smiled with too many teeth. "We've been expecting you." I didn't like the "we." Moptimus began to vibrate violently in my grip. Suddenly, the clearing dimmed. Not darker, just off. Like reality had dropped a few frames. The ranger creature raised a hand. "Stop cleaning." His voice wasn't a suggestion. It had weight behind it, like a hypnotist forcing your thoughts sideways. I almost froze. Almost. But Moptimus pulled against me, snapping my brain back online. I dunked the mop again and slammed it against the last pool of blood. The air cracked like lightning. The ranger screamed as his skin bubbled. The buck shrieked and vanished in a burst of cinders. The entire stone circle shattered like glass. I stumbled backward as the mop glowed, blue runes pulsing up its handle like veins. That was new. The last time it did that, we accidentally banished a demon back in Idaho. The forest went silent again. Whatever ritual they'd been preparing, disrupted. Whatever force had been watching, furious. I dragged myself back to the cabin, body aching. Adrenaline bottomed out. Moptimus sagged in my hand like a drunk wizard's staff. Back inside, I dropped onto the floor and stared at the mop. "You just stopped a summoning circle," I whispered. "You absolute legend." The mop gave a little drip. I crossed out part of the original rule list and rewrote it in black marker. Rules to survive the mountain. Never hunt past midnight. Burn sage if it talks like a human. Moptimus drinks first. Clean every drop of blood. Or they will summon something worse. If Moptimus stands on its own, back away and let it handle the fight. Then I wrote a new rule underneath. 6. If you see the stitched face buck again, run. The next morning I found hoof prints on the ceiling. Not my cabin's roof. The inside. Every beam had been walked on by something upside down with hooves the size of dinner plates. And it wasn't just walking, it was pacing, watching, waiting. I checked every inch of the place, but there was no sign of how it got in. No busted doors, no cracked windows. Just that soft, piney scent that the stitched face buck always leaves behind. Whatever that thing is, it isn't playing around anymore. Neither am I. By noon, I was packed and loaded. No waiting for nightfall this time. If they were bringing the fight to me, then I'd return the favor. I brought everything. Salt rounds, silver blades, garlic gum, don't laugh, it works on breath and vampires, and of course Moptimus Prime. I poured a bottle of my holy ammonia mix into the mop bucket and held it up. "You first," I muttered. The mop twitched, dipped its fibers into the liquid, and sizzled like a branding iron in oil. Then it began to glow. That was rule 3. Moptimus drinks first. I'd learned that one the hard way last year when we faced a cave leech that spit acid. I'd gone in dry, mopped after the fight, and the mop slapped me in the face. Refused to clean until I poured the juice in first. Lesson learned. I threw the bucket in the back of the truck, grabbed my hunting journal, and traced the ritual circle I saw yesterday to an old ranger outpost marked Echo Hollow. Locals said Echo Hollow was cursed. Sound didn't echo there. It repeated itself wrong, like a delay that came back louder and meaner. I drove there by dusk. The woods around the cave were eerily silent. No birds, no wind. Just that wet feeling in your lungs that means something unnatural is nearby. The cave's mouth was wide and jagged, like a scream frozen in stone. Bones littered the edge. Small ones, big ones. Something had been feeding. I stepped inside, flashlight in one hand, mop in the other. The air smelled like wet pennies and burnt hair. That's when the whispers started. Not in front of me, not behind me, inside me. They sounded like my voice, but twisted, desperate, afraid. I gritted my teeth and pressed deeper. The tunnel curved into a circular chamber, smooth and cold, with symbols carved into the walls that pulsed a dull red. And at the center, something squatted. It looked like a man, until it turned. No mouth, no eyes, no face. Just writhing muscle and a crown of stitched skin nailed into its skull like a halo. It stood and screeched. The sound was wrong. Not a noise. but a feeling. It made my knees lock and my stomach drop like vertigo in my blood. I reached for the shotgun. Too late. It lunged, but Moptimus moved first. The mop flung itself from my hands and coiled around the thing's neck. It twisted, flexed, and pulled, with such force that I heard bones snap like pencils. The faceless horror thrashed, slammed into the wall, cracked stone, and still Moptimus held tight. I dropped to my knees, grabbed the mop bucket, and flung the holy water mix over them both. The creature screamed, and for a moment, I swear I saw 100 faces flicker across its skin, every victim it had ever worn. Moptimus absorbed it all. The thing slumped to the floor, twitching. The mop pulled back, steaming, smoking, but undamaged. Then, it stood, on its own. Again, fibers raised, handle glowing blue. I knew what that meant. Rule 5. If Moptimus stands on its own, back away. I did. Fast. The mop floated in the air and began to spin. Faster and faster. It blurred into a tornado of holy fury, striking the walls, breaking the symbols, cracking the ceiling. Every swipe erased some unnatural energy from the space. The creature gasped. Its body began to shrink like it was being erased pixel by pixel. Then with a snap, it was gone. No remains. No blood. Just silence. The mop settled gently on the cave floor. I picked it up, hands shaking. "I don't know what you are," I whispered, "but remind me never to make you mad." We left Echo Hollow in ruins. Back at the cabin, I updated the rules again. Rules to survive the mountain. Never hunt past midnight. Burn sage if it talks like a human. Moptimus drinks first, or he'll go dry and vengeful. Clean every drop of blood, or they'll summon worse things. If Moptimus stands on its own, back away and let it handle the fight. If you see the stitched face buck again, run. Then I added another note. Echo Hollow destroyed. Ritual disrupted. Moptimus evolving. I went to bed that night holding the mop beside me, like a kid clutching a teddy bear with flamethrower upgrades. Outside, the wind howled. And for just a second, I thought I heard my own voice echo back. But wrong. The nightmares hit around 2 a.m. I was asleep in my cabin when I woke to the sound of fibers brushing wood. Not scratching, not slithering. Just that soft, swaying sound like something was mopping the floor. I sat up, groggy. There, in the faint glow of the fireplace, was Moptimus, standing on its own, slowly cleaning a dark stain that hadn't been there when I went to bed. It wasn't blood. It wasn't anything I could see exactly. But the moment I looked at it, my eyes watered and my skin started to crawl like it had seen a color that shouldn't exist. Rule 5. If Moptimus stands on its own, back away. So I did. I crawled off the bed, didn't make a sound, and watched as the mop finished its pass across the wood. When it was done, it vibrated once, then slumped to the floor like it had passed out. The fire flared up, and the room was clean. But my head was full of static. I barely slept after that. By morning, I knew something was coming. You don't get an omen mop scrubbing interdimensional stains on its own unless the mountains are about to throw a tantrum. I opened my hunting journal, cross-referenced the dreams, the stitched buck, the blood trails, the mimic voices. It all pointed to one thing: the hollow horn. It's not a creature, it's a force, old, pre-human, buried deep in the Rockies, kept dormant by ancient rituals and bloodlines long extinct. But if the stitched face buck was acting as its scout, and the Echo Cave was its ritual site, then someone, or something, was trying to wake it up. I had to stop that. Problem was, I didn't know where the hollow horn slept, until I opened a drawer and found a map I didn't own. Hand-drawn, burnt edges. One location circled in red ink that smelled faintly of sulfur. A place called Vulture's Spine. I geared up, full loadout. Salt, silver, flare gun, Moptimus soaked in anti-eldritch cleaner. I even strapped holy water vials to my vest like a Catholic Rambo. Vulture's spine was 2 hours west by truck, then another 2 on foot. The terrain changed the closer I got. Trees started warping, bark twisted like rope, and birds flew in reverse. No sounds, no bugs, no wind. I reached the base of the spine at dusk. It was a jagged ridge that jutted out of the mountain like a broken rib. All stone. All wrong. There were doors carved into the side. Old ones. Built for something taller than a man. I hesitated. Moptimus twitched once on my back. Yeah, I muttered. You're excited. I'm terrified. Typical. I stepped inside. The tunnels were smooth, clean, like they'd been polished by something that lived in darkness. No moss, no dust, just that faint smell of bleach and time. After 20 minutes of descent, I found it. A chamber filled with bones, piled high, stacked neatly, arranged in a circle. In the center was a pedestal. On top of it, a mop. Not Moptimus, but close. It was older, wrapped in rusted chains, its fibers gray as moonlight, and its handle carved with runes I couldn't read, but they pulsed the same blue glow Moptimus had after Echo Hollow. My mop vibrated violently on my back. I took it off. It hovered, then floated slowly toward the old one. The moment they touched, my ears bled. Visions exploded in my head. A war, 1,000 years ago. Mops like swords, fighting monsters in dimensions made of teeth. Custodians, not humans, guardians. I fell to my knees, gasping. The bones around me began to move. They weren't bones. They were seeds. One by one, they began to twitch, grow, expand. And from them rose creatures I can't even describe. Bone-thin with mouths where their joints should be. Crawling like wet spiders, dripping memory instead of blood. I raised my shotgun. Moptimus moved first. It blasted outward like a grenade of light, slamming the creatures back, erasing them in streaks of blue flame. The old mop on the pedestal joined it. The 2 mops spun like twin hurricanes, clearing the chamber with divine violence. The creatures shrieked and dissolved. I watched from the floor, completely useless, awestruck. When it was done, Moptimus floated back to me, smoking, tired. The old mop? Gone? Absorbed? Rejoined? Promoted to mop heaven? No clue. But Moptimus was stronger now. Its fibers were stitched with silver. The runes glowed constantly, and it felt heavier, in a good way, like it knew who it was now. We climbed out of Vulture's spine in silence. That night, back at the cabin, I updated the rules. Rules to survive the mountain. Never hunt past midnight. Burn sage if it talks like a human. Moptimus drinks first, or he'll go dry and vengeful. Clean, every drop of blood, or they'll summon worse things. If Moptimus stands on its own, back away and let it handle the fight. If you see the stitched face buck again, run. If you find another mop, don't touch it. Tomorrow, I hunt the hollow horn, and I'm not going alone this time. I never used to believe in fate, but after watching my mop fly through the air like a possessed ninja and disintegrate a nest of interdimensional bone worms, I'm open to the idea, especially now. Because last night, I had a dream. Not the usual face made of mouths dream, or the ants with fingers dream. This one was clear, sharp, like it was beamed straight into my skull. There was a mountain, there was a door, there was me, and Moptimus Prime, and standing between us and that door was a beast made of antlers, smoke, and regret. I woke up soaked in sweat and bear spray. Don't ask. The map was waiting for me, the same one I didn't own, marked now with a different location. Razorback Ridge. Looks like the hollow horn wanted me to find it. Fine. Let's dance. The hike up Razorback Ridge was hell. The terrain shifted under my feet. Trees leaned away from me like I carried some disease they didn't want. Every animal track I saw was backward. Even the wind whistled wrong. But I made it. At the summit, there was a clearing carved into the mountain. Ancient. Black stone altar in the middle. spiral carvings running out from it like veins. And standing at the center of it all was the stitched-face buck. Alive. Tall. Proud. Floating. Antlers now the size of a moose rack, splitting into branches full of human teeth. He looked at me and whispered, "You broke the rules." No lie detected. I stepped forward. Moptimus was already twitching like a bloodhound on caffeine. "I'm here to finish this," I said. The buck's stitched mouth stretched into something like a smile. "You're too late. He's already waking up." The mountain rumbled. Cracks split the ground. Black sap oozed up like veins being opened. The altar pulsed red. Something below was stirring. I didn't have time for speeches. I grabbed Moptimus and charged. The buck screamed, a war cry that shattered every window in my head, and dove at me, antlers first. I ducked, rolled, and brought the mop around like a baseball bat. Crack. The hit echoed like thunder, but the buck didn't fall. He shifted, warped. Now part fog, part bone. He zipped around the clearing, raking his antlers across the stone, chanting words that smelled like burnt feathers and childhood trauma. Moptimus leapt from my grip mid-swing, took off like a guided missile. The two clashed mid-air, mop versus monster, swirling, striking, glowing. The mop whipped around his throat, antlers, spine, ripping through dimensions. Every time the mop struck, a burst of holy fire lit up the mountain. The buck screamed and dropped to one knee, but the altar cracked wide open, and something began to rise. At first, it looked like smoke, then antlers, then limbs. The hollow horn was climbing out of the earth, fleshless, titanic, made of shadow and sin and forest rot. Its body was stitched together from every dead thing this mountain ever swallowed. And its eyes? They looked like mine. It let out a growl that collapsed part of the summit. I stumbled backward, nearly falling off the ridge. Moptimus stopped mid-fight with the buck and turned toward the hollow horn. The mop glowed white-hot. The silver runes up its handle flared. Then it grew. Not just metaphorically, literally. The mop doubled in size. Its fibers became blades of glowing thread. Its handle stretched skyward. It hovered in front of me like a weapon waiting to be wielded. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed it with both hands. The power that shot through me nearly blew my spine out the top of my skull. Electricity, fire, bleach, rage, love, everything, all at once. I became something else, something clean. With a battle cry I'll never remember, I charged the hollow horn and swung with everything I had. The mop struck. The hollow horn reeled. Reality cracked. Thunder boomed from inside the creature's chest. My feet lifted off the ground from the force of the explosion. Light erupted from the mop, pure, divine light. And the hollow horn screamed, not just in pain, in fear, because something deep inside that creature knew this mop, knew what it was, and it knew it wasn't going to win. Moptimus spun from my grip, hovered above the creature's skull, and then dove, straight into its open mouth. There was a pause. Then a burst of white flame erupted from the hollow horn's body. The beast convulsed, twisted, collapsed. The stitched buck screamed and imploded into a pile of antlers and ash. Silence returned. Smoke drifted away on the wind. The altar cracked, then crumbled, and Moptimus floated gently down into my hands, slightly smoking, slightly glowing, and totally, 100% smug. I dropped to my knees, panting. We'd won. Back at the cabin, I crossed out the old list. It wasn't enough anymore. I made a new one. Rules to survive the mountain. You're not alone. Some monsters aren't born. They're summoned. Moptimus Prime is not of this world. If he drinks first, you live. If he floats, stay behind him. If he disappears and pray. If he fights, let him finish, never take credit. The mop knows. Tomorrow I rest, but I know this isn't over. Because as I write this, Moptimus is standing again and pointing east. When your mop points toward the horizon, you follow it, even if your ribs are bruised, even if your boots are half melted. even if every part of you is screaming to just lie down and die. Because when Moptimus Prime points at something, it's never to say, "Look at the view." It's saying, "There's one more monster left." We left before dawn. I didn't pack much, just the basics: flare gun, med kit, granola bar that tasted like old regret, and Moptimus, freshly dunked in ammonia and holy water and something I can only describe as liquid sunlight. I siphoned off the hollow horn's remains. The mop was humming. Literally. It made a low, almost comforting sound, like a choir warming up before a divine exorcism. The trail led east through Black Hollow Pass, past Widow's Bluff, and up into a part of the Rockies I'd never dared enter before. Locals call it Dead Man's Basin. Real welcoming name. By noon, I knew something was wrong. The trees stopped casting shadows, the wind blew in reverse, and my compass was spinning like a drunk on a tilt-a-whirl. That's when I saw the clearing. No trees, just snow. And at the center of it stood a cabin, small, old, built like mine, and nailed to the front door was a list. I approached slowly. The list was written in jagged ink on yellow paper, looked familiar. I leaned in. It read, "Rules to survive the mountain. Never hunt past midnight, burn sage if it talks like a human. Moptimus drinks first. Clean every drop of blood. If he floats, stay back. If he points, follow. If you see yourself." Run, that last rule made my stomach drop. I turned slowly, and there I was, standing in the clearing. Same clothes, same shotgun, same everything. Only difference? He wasn't holding Moptimus. He was holding nothing, and he was smiling. "Hey there," he said, voice warm, friendly. "Looks like you've made it pretty far." My hand went to my mop instinctively. He didn't flinch. He just cocked his head. "You think you're the original?" I blinked. "Come again?" "I've killed 3 versions of you this week," he said casually. "They all made it this far, but none of them had that." He pointed at the mop. "Which means you might actually be him." I didn't like the sound of that. He took a step forward, and that's when Moptimus leapt from my hands. It hovered in the air between us, spinning slowly. Fake me's smile faltered. "Oh, you bonded with it. Damn." I raised my shotgun. He raised his hand. Lightning crashed. The sky turned black. Moptimus screamed, not with sound, with light. It exploded outward, ripping the clearing in half. Fake me flew back, slammed into the cabin, and shattered. Not just bones, glass. He wasn't me. He was a reflection, a copy. The cabin cracked down the middle, and something inside it howled. A shape emerged, all teeth, all antlers, the true core of the hollow horn, the part that never dies. It lunged for me, but Moptimus went nova. Every rune on its handle lit up, its fibers extended outward like spears. The mop screamed a final war cry and flew straight into the beast's mouth. Boom. The mountain shuddered, the clearing collapsed inward. Snow melted, trees snapped, the false world peeled away like paper on fire. And then, silence. I stood alone. The mop lay still at my feet, no glow, no hum, just a mop. "Did we win?" I whispered. It didn't move. I knelt. "You okay, buddy?" No twitch. I picked it up gently. The fibers were singed but intact. Moptimus Prime was tired, but not gone. We walked out of that place and never looked back. Back at the cabin, I wrote the final update. Rules to survive the mountain. Final edition. Trust the mop. Never hunt past midnight. Burn sage if it talks like a human. Moptimus drinks first. Clean every drop of blood. If he stands, step aside. If he points, follow. If you meet yourself, don't blink. Never take credit. The mop knows. When it's over, let the mop rest. I don't know what's next. Maybe the hollow horn is gone for good. Maybe not. But for now, the mountains are quiet. And Moptimus? He's back on the wall, motionless, waiting.